Classroom examples. Now we are going to look at a few classroom examples where responsible code switching takes place and where you will also have some examples of how micro and macro alternation between languages is introduced in the classrooms. You have this Chinese classroom in a US state, and research actually showed that when the Chinese students were allowed to use Chinese, rather encouraged to use Chinese, when learning how to write in English language, that writing process itself was expedited. They were able to learn English language writing skills faster, and they also showed a lot of cross-linguistic analysis because constantly, as we discussed earlier, they were able to make comparisons between their Chinese writing skills and their English language writing skills and the demands of that language style itself. So they were also able to, by doing this, talk about the strategies that they used when writing in Chinese and the strategies that are demanded of them when they are moving on to read or to write in English language. So the way the language is structured, the way the verbs are used or the verb endings are used in English language are not this does not happen in the Chinese language. And by talking about it clearly, the Chinese students were able to pick this up faster. Then you have this program at Val d'Aoste, an Italian town, where bilingual educational programs are encouraged. So the languages used are Italian and French. And what they use is what we talked about as micro and macro alternation mode, both in reading and writing. So within a single classroom, although they assign one language to one subject, they allow the other language to enter it, and they also carefully use what we called responsible code switching at micro level within classrooms. So this is an interesting classroom. What they do is that, for instance, if they ask the students to read a subject or to study a subject in one language, then they ask the students to deliberately write the answers in another language. So they also allow the students, if they're, for instance, writing something, they might ask them that they can switch to either of the language while they write, as and when they feel comfortable. So what these students are doing is actually sort of like trans-languaging. Their tests are also built in a way in which the students are allowed to switch between languages. And what was the result of these languages? It was realized that as compared with other bilingual programs, where strict separation of the languages was maintained, these students were not badly affected to learn either Italian or French. So their bilingual practices did not affect negatively their learning of the two languages that they wanted to learn, and neither did it badly affect their cognitive skills, which has been a major argument in terms of not using code switching in classrooms. It is argued, however, that in situations of unequal power between languages, as is the case in Pakistan, for instance, where English is definitely the language of prestige as compared to your original language or the Urdu language itself, it might be important to protect the minority languages by not just giving it some space for code switching, but also to actually giving some space to it in terms of allocating a subject to it. So it's not just not enough for the students, for instance, in private schools where they code switch from English to Urdu when they are discussing something, but also that language has to have a parallel space for itself. So, and what we call responsible code switching, this is a means to it.